Hello and welcome to the Gestalt IT Rundown, where each week we run down the news of the week and potentially inject a little bit of humor into the things that are all tech. My name is Tom Hollingsworth and I'm an analyst at gestaltit.com, and I'm joined here by my co-hosts for this week.
You go first.
Oh, I was going to have you go first.
Okay. I'm Stephen Foskett.
No, I want to go first.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm Ken Nalbone, at Ken Nalbone on the Twitters, and I love the cloud.
I'm Stephen Foskett, at S Foskett, and you can find me on Twitter and Gestalt IT, and I'm Mr. Storage. Hey, Storage.
And you probably noticed that we're not in our typical studio, and that's because we're all on site here at VMworld 2019 this week. There's a lot of interesting things going on. You can probably see some of it happening behind us, and we wanted to give you a little bit of a rundown of some of the exciting news that's been going on. So buckle up. It's going to be very virtual before it's all said and done with. We probably want to start off with what I would consider to be one of the biggest news stories this week, which is VMware has announced two big acquisitions. They are buying endpoint security company Carbon Black for approximately $2.1 billion, and they're also purchasing Pivotal for $2.7 billion. Now, according to CEO Pat Gelsinger from last week, both companies will operate profitably under VMware by next year, leading to an estimated hybrid cloud and software as a service revenue of approximately $3 billion by the end of 2020. The deal is expected to close in January, with Carbon Black CEO Patrick Morley heading a new security business unit inside of VMware. And as a reminder, Pivotal and VMware are majority-owned subsidiaries of Dell EMC. Now, all of this comes after acquisitions of Intrinsic and Veriflow earlier this year. Stephen and Ken, is this VMware filling out their portfolio to be a more complete company, or are we seeing a bigger shift?
It's a little bit of both. I think the Carbon Black is absolutely them filling out their portfolio. Security has been a big focus the past couple of years for VMware, right? But it's been more on the infrastructure side, and this brings them closer to the endpoints. So they want to have a complete security portfolio. Pivotal, I'm not so sure about it being part of the rounding out of the portfolio so much as it is kind of saving the company that's been having trouble lately. And some investors have been unhappy with the company's performance, and maybe VMware can turn it around. Maybe it's just a way to capture more of the developer audience, which is what they've been trying to do for years now, with mixed results, right?
Yeah. So I'm attending VMworld as an analyst on the analyst track, which means that I've gotten to spend some time with the management of VMware, as well as Michael Dell and Pat Gelsinger. Last night we had a discussion with them, and I will say that Pat absolutely is sticking to the story that the Pivotal acquisition fits into the overall strategy of the company.
Of course he is.
Everyone is saying Carbon Black fits in, and I have no doubt that Carbon Black is a fantastic acquisition. It fits perfectly in VMware's strategy. Pat has said that security is a big enterprise problem that he wants to solve, and this is how he's going to solve it. He basically said, this is, I had a choice of a few companies to buy. This one was cost effective, it was good technology, and we went for it. And so I think the Carbon Black story is off the table. Great investment. They bought it, they needed it, it fits, we're good. The Pivotal question is a little different. Now, they did try to fit that in repeatedly. They spent a lot of time talking to us about how it fits in with the overall VMware strategy. And I get that they feel that it fits in with their strategy. I also have been to enough of these things to know that they would never admit if it was merely a financial engineering transaction. Nobody has given even the subtlest whiff of it being a way to extract money and pay off the investors and transfer cash from VMware to Dell. Nobody said anything like that, even when pushed. Last night one of the analysts did specifically ask Michael Dell that question, which is, isn't this just a way to take cash off of VMware's balance sheet and give it to EMC, or listen to me, give it to Dell to give it to the investors? And the answer was, I'm shocked that you would even suggest such a thing. And so that's no. We'll see. I mean, honestly, we don't know. We won't know. It does fit-ish.
Yeah.
With what they've been saying for years they want to do, which is, not necessarily be relevant to the enterprise IT infrastructure guys, but the people who are actually developing the apps, which they have not really been able to do thus far.
Yeah.
Looking taking a step back, though, we've seen these 2 acquisitions. We saw a couple last week. We've seen many this year. Is VMware just moving into the phase where they don't innovate, they just acquire? Or have they already been there?
VMware acquires.
Yes. Do they just acquire? Or are they still capable of innovation?
I think they're still capable of innovation.
I think the biggest issue, though, is that they're trying to acquire to get to an innovation point because they've been stalled out on this idea that the VM is the center of the universe for so long, and the industry has moved away from that. Now, granted, NSBU, the group that does NSX, has been doing a lot of innovation because they've been playing catch up in the networking space. So they are trying to extend this metaphor of VMs and overlay networking into what people have been used to for years. But I think from the server side, they got caught flat-footed with the cloud. I mean, there was some rumblings on Twitter today. It's like, man, could you imagine if someone had come to VMware 3 years ago with a session, it's like, cloud is a reality, deal with it? You'd have been laughed out of the thing. And now you see those kinds of things popping up on the schedule where you're like, okay, listen, we have to admit cloud is a thing. We have to deal with it. And you better get ready for it because we're going that direction whether you like it or not.
No, that's absolutely true, and we're kind of going to get to that with the future story. But
yeah, I think that's maybe the next story.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about hardware because that's what everybody on the Gestalt IT Rundown loves. VMware's found a way to virtualize some more hardware. NVIDIA and VMware has announced a partnership that allows for the virtualization of graphical processing units, or GPUs, either on premises or in the cloud, thanks to VMware Cloud on AWS. NVIDIA's vCompute server will provide virtualization frameworks that are optimized to run on VMware vSphere. This will allow a single GPU to be shared by multiple users, as well as aggregate GPUs for larger tasks. vCompute server will support NVIDIA's data processing and machine learning libraries called Rapids, and will also support containerized applications. No surprise given the likely increasing importance of GPUs in the enterprise. Does this hurt or help something like composable infrastructure?
Well, we had a great conversation, again, on the analyst track about this, where we were discussing, VMware actually used the term disaggregated HCI.
oh no,
But
That's a thing?
but which was hilarious to everybody involved. But I don't think they quite meant to use that term. I think that those words just sort of together. But basically, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about having a hyperconverged environment with specialty nodes that do specialty things that can be shared as needed. And great, awesome. Frankly, I think it's a good move.
And it's not the first time that you could use a GPU within a VM, but they've never been virtualized before. It's like, okay, I'm going to pass through this hardware, certain ones can be shared, but now it's a much more easier construct to deploy. And it's kind of like, well, it's about time, right? Because these workloads that you talked about with AI and all the other purposes that people have been finding for GPUs, they've been going to a cloud provider for a long time to do it. And finally, now VMware's hypervisor caught on. They're supposedly the leader in hypervisors, but they're not the first to market with this capability.
I think you're going to see a big uptake from VMware trying to sell this into HPC, because this is where render farms come in handy. When you have to have 70 billion CUDA cores that you have to throw an ML framework at, you need something to work with that.
And the virtualization nuts have been for a while saying, you have an HPC workload, you should virtualize it, and they get laughed out of the room by the people who are actually doing HPC, because they're like, we can't. No, that makes no sense.
Well, for what it's worth, one of the people that was briefing us was the, I don't know if CTO is the right word, but basically CTO for HPC. It was the HPC guy. So you hit it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. All right, since we have Stephen Foskett on the rundown this week, we had to work in a storage story, and since we're here at VMworld, HPE has announced that it is making its consumption-based Greenlake managed storage service available to VMware Cloud Foundation customers. Greenlake has been HPE's fastest growing business this year and part of their overall plan to offer its entire portfolio as a service starting about 2022. Who's this a bigger deal for, HPE or VMware?
HPE.
Yeah, HPE.
No, but it's not totally irrelevant for VMware, and that's, I think, the interesting thing. So again, we discussed this whole consumption-based model with Pat Gelsinger, and VMware is committed to moving more towards subscription-based revenues. He was talking some of the numbers. I don't recall exactly, so I won't repeat, but basically, VMware is heading in that direction. clearly HPE is heading in that direction. I was at HPE Discover this year, and they spent a lot of time talking about basically GreenLake all the things. And for those of you who don't know, essentially GreenLake is not really a product; it's more of a financing solution. It says, you can buy it as you go. And it has been a tremendous success for HPE. They've moved rapidly in that direction, and kudos to them, frankly. I'm super impressed that they've been able to do that. If you're using Cloud Foundation, does it really make a lot of sense to have like a rack of stuff dropped in your data center and you own it now and eventually you're going to use it in a cloud? I mean, is that even a cloud? But consumption-based pricing is the right direction, and I love the idea that they're using this, that they're leveraging HPE's GreenLake, which is a good solution, and that it also shows a commitment from VMware to not just be Dell.
Yeah, and because you noticed that there was a significant amount of time in both the Monday and Tuesday keynotes talking about VMware Cloud on Dell EMC. So clearly they're going all in on that. So it's a bigger deal for HPE because they want to get noticed in that market, but it also somewhat validates this project, right? The fact that, well, now it's a kind of an OEM first-party offering through VMware and Dell means it validates the design. It validates the model, the business model.
Plus, I think it also gives them a little bit of an out when everyone's like, oh, well, Dell's trying to take over everything you do, and this way they can go, nah, see, HPE, we still love you guys.
Yeah.
Yep, and every single year at VMworld, that is a trend of we should have a drinking game of VMware executives lining up to tout non-Dell EMC things just to show, look, we're And it's worked so far. I mean, HPE is here in force. Lenovo is here. They're one of the biggest sponsors. I mean, they're here.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we're going to migrate from storage all the way to the edge.
We're going to vMotion there.
No. We're going to migrate because vMotion's a trademark term, and we don't use trademark terms on the rundown. No, we're going to talk about VMware Workspace One. So, at VMworld, VMware has announced updates to Workspace One. The virtual workspace platform will offer concierge services, including an AI-powered virtual assistant, Workspace One Assist for device management, in addition to context-aware predictive tools for lifecycle management and employee questions. I smell chatbots. It will also feature a broader endpoint management with support for iOS 13, which will be coming out very soon, to bring your own device enrollment, locking down Chrome OS devices, because we've always been worried about those things, and Dell BIOS verification and remediation. Finally, Workspace One offers Horizon Services, desktop as a service, offering support across public clouds and on-prem. Now, I know that when we're in VMworld, we spend a lot of our time talking about the enterprise, the infrastructure, and the cloud. Is this update to VMware's Workspace solutions a big deal, Ken?
It is a big deal to the people who are really focused on user experiences, which we all should be, but we often forget about it. VMware's thought about, let's make life easier for the admins, let's make life easier for the developers, but also, shouldn't we think about our end users as well? Isn't that kind of what matters?
Someone please think of the end users.
So they've made consistent improvements to the platform over time. These are cool ones. I'm not sold on the AI assistant concierge thing just yet. It made for a really cool demo.
But they demoed that in the keynote on Monday.
I know. And they also demoed sending a new employee their offer letter on Workspace One, which means you have to get the new employee to sign up for an account before they ever accept the offer. I don't think that somebody thought that demo through very well. But yeah, I think it's important. I think that there's a very particular audience for it. It's just a fraction of the people who are here. But they are all in on these kinds of basically end-user computing type of platforms. They care deeply about it, and good for them. I'm not one of them, but there needs to be that focus out there.
Yeah, I have a hard time wrapping my head around this stuff for a while now, because people don't want that on their laptops. I mean, we all three work in an environment where we don't have a common desktop theme. We don't have a common corporate image. But all the work we do, we collaborate with documents in Google Cloud and all that other stuff. I don't see this as extending VMware's reach, because I think there are other companies that do it better. When you look at companies like Citrix, they're kicking butt in the applications as a service arena, and even they're getting their butts kicked by Salesforce and Office 365 because they're still very focused on the on-premises aspect of things. So I don't think that Horizon and Workspace One are going to be the end-all, be-all. I think this is kind of like a gasp to keep VMware all the way to that edge until such time as we don't really use edge devices anymore.
Well, one maybe contrarian perspective is that maybe we're taking too small of a view of this. Maybe the demo even was too small of a view. I mean, frankly, edge computing is one of the big emerging trends, and it's not just client device edge. And I'm wondering if maybe this is just the first instantiation of an edge computing strategy that will eventually include IoT and industrial edge and all these other things, and that all this technology could then be used across a much broader spectrum, because we're all kind of stuck in the data center, and we all kind of expect that the data center it's where the money is, it's where the interesting stuff is. But to most of the world, that's not true. And the thing, VMware is getting, I don't want to say eaten. They're getting attacked by the cloud providers. The data center, the whole data center enterprise IT is being attacked by, the cloud and absorbed by the cloud and abstracted and all this kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean the end of computing, and it doesn't mean the end of Dell, and it doesn't mean the end of VMware. Being relevant in the edge, I think maybe really does give them an alternative future if the data center gets eaten up.
I can see that.
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right, because there's never going to be a complete departure. The cloud will not be the silver bullet, despite the many people that think so. I love the multiple use cases that people have come up with, but the edge is very important because of the delivery aspect. And it comes back to what we were talking about, user experiences. That's what matters in the end, right? The consumers or the employees that are consuming that.
All right. Well, we got one last story for you, and it may be one of the biggest stories that have come out of VMworld. It was a big surprise announcement on Monday that VMware has decided to sail the 7 seas. They announced Project Pacific, which is an effort to re-architect the vSphere architecture to deeply integrate and embed Kubernetes. Yes, you heard that right. VMware is taking a turn with containers. This will allow IT operations admins to see and manage Kubernetes pods from inside of the vSphere client with support for existing third-party tools. The ultimate goal is to enable app-level control for applying policies, quotas, and role-based access to developers. Now, gentlemen, is this a big deal, or is this a really big deal?
Oh, it's a really big deal. I mean, does VMware have to change their name now to K8ware or something?
Yes,
they've been trying for years to find a container strategy, and none of them have had a very good start. And I think it's all had to lead up to this point. For years they were saying, oh, we think that containers on VMs is the way to go. There's always going to be VM under the container. It's the best way to manage it, until we figure out how to integrate it into vSphere was the subtext of all that, right? It's in a tech preview stage, if even that. At this point, they've announced that it's a project, but they don't have a product shipping yet. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But everybody agrees that the VM is going to be displaced by the container for most applications. There are certain things that are not going to be re-architected because it doesn't make sense or it's not financially viable, but you're going to see the majority of workloads running on containers. And VMware has been trying forever, what seems like forever to me, to figure out how to deliver that so they can stay relevant. Is this that? It's still running on top of vSphere, which is largely an on-premises solution. Yes, we see VMware as the hypervisor making its way into pretty much every cloud provider now, but do the developers that are creating applications care about that, or do they just want to manage Kubernetes or use Kubernetes? They don't want to even manage it. All these different cloud providers make that very simple now. VMware's finally going to make that simple, but is it in time?
So you're looking at this from the container perspective.
Yes.
I want to flip it around and say it's a really, really big deal because it's Kubernetes. And not only that,
not just containers, but Kubernetes specifically.
It's Kubernetes not just for containers. It's Kubernetes as an application management platform. And I think that that's the really interesting thing from my perspective. VMware has again and again and again and again and again tried to come up with some way of describing and encapsulating applications. And Kubernetes does that. Mm-hmm. And yes, it does it for containers, but it also does it for not containers.
It's true.
And I think the most interesting aspect and prospect for Project Pacific is the idea that Kubernetes, basically you're bringing the Kubernetes philosophy to not just containers and not just the enterprise, but you're bringing it to the entire enterprise, the entire data center. And so essentially what it means is that Kubernetes wins the application specification war. And remember too that VMware bought Heptio. VMware has like the architects of Kubernetes. I mean, VMware is driving the project right now. I don't want to say, maybe that's overstating it. VMware is pivotal, if I can use a word, to the Kubernetes project, and they are absolutely committed to Kubernetes as basically the application description and application operations framework world, and this is that. And I think that that's the most exciting aspect of this announcement, is that we finally in the enterprise have a way of describing applications and data.
Who is this a bigger deal for then, VMware or the Kubernetes project? Because it kind of validates what everybody has been saying the past couple of years, but it is now the application delivery framework moving forward.
It is. The answer is solved. Yes, it is one.
It is. But I mean, the fact that who is it a bigger signal for VMware catching up or for Kubernetes being basically adopted? You understand what I'm saying there?
Yeah, but I'm not just too worried about it. I feel like, it doesn't really matter whether it's a big deal for Kubernetes or a big deal for VMware. What matters is to the enterprise data center. Kubernetes is coming. It's coming with vSphere. It's gonna be it.
And of course, the chatter on Twitter yesterday from all the VMworld attendees was, well, now I really need to learn Kubernetes, and many replies were, no, you needed to learn that 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, but if you're still looking to learn it, check out some of the field day delegates. There's probably a lot of writing, and
it's never too late to learn something.
Never too late.
Yeah, exactly. And I know there's been a lot of buzz. I had a talk with one of my old field day delegate mates, Sean Clark, and he was extolling the virtues of Kubernetes, and he said, you need to stop thinking about it as containers and as a platform. And I think that that's going to be an interesting look at things going forward. But we're out of time for this episode of the Gestalt IT Rundown. If you missed any of this episode, or if you missed any of the episodes previous to this when VMware's been on their famous buying spree, you definitely want to go check that out on our Facebook page, where you're probably watching this right now, or you can head over to YouTube. Just Google for Gestalt IT, and we have a YouTube channel packed with all kinds of great stuff there. We also have a lot of great content on our website at gestaltit.com, and these gentlemen have a little bit of great content that they want to share with you as well. Ken, if people want to do that, where can they find you?
Most of it is on Gestalt IT, as mentioned, but I'm also on Twitter at Ken Nalbone, and you can find my random thoughts about tech and other non-tech things there on a regular basis.
Absolutely. And you'll find me at Foskett on Twitter, and that has links to basically everything I publish everywhere. And so also I want to give one special shout out to Joe Beta from the Kubernetes founder, who is the first person in my memory to use the word Gestalt in a sentence spontaneously. Yesterday he was talking and he said something about blah, 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 it's the Gestalt. And I was like, oh, I love him. So yes, thank you very much for understanding Gestalt.
All right, and if you want to follow some of the stuff that I'm doing, you can always find me on Twitter as @NetworkingNerd. Like Stephen said, there's links to the blogs that I do, but I do a lot of my writing now on GestaltIT.com because we have a lot of great enterprise IT content headed your way. If you would like to tune in to watch the Rundown live every week, please make sure you are tuned into our Facebook page at facebook.com/GestaltIT at 12:30 Eastern Time on Wednesday. And I hope you guys go out and enjoy a wonderful National Bow Tie Day. I highly recommend something with polka dots, perhaps in red, as is my favorite. But for the Gestalt IT crew, for here at VMworld, we're signing off, and we hope that you have a super sparkly day.